Good day, my friends. I'm Vance Martin, president of the Wild Foundation and founder and chairman of the Wilderness Specialist Group at the IUCN. It's a great honor to be here. I thank you, the organizers of this conference, the Qinghai government, CBC, GDF, the whole team there, everyone involved. Thank you so much. My message to start off with is very simple. Our time is now. The time for action is now. For so many years, we've been hearing stories of climate change and species loss. It all seemed like it was in the future. Well, it's now. This existential crisis is no longer on the horizon. It's knocking on our door. The most important thing we can do is to realize that, not be fearful of it, but to take action on it. One of the things I'm encouraged about these days is that the big institutions, which for so long resistant to change, whether they were governments or think tanks or universities, you see what's happened just in the last couple of years. First and foremost, of course, is the visionary policy of eco-civilization by your president, Xi Jinping. This is a vision of harmony between humankind and nature. And it's harmonization that is needed because we've been out of harmony now for a very, very long time. And when you're out of harmony, you get reaction. Nature is not mean. Nature is not kind. Nature has laws, and laws have consequences. When you're in harmony with nature or a set of laws, then you don't suffer the consequences, you reap the benefits of working together. So that's one. Another one I'm very encouraged by is the World Economic Forum in Switzerland. This is really the site of, or the convergence point of so many of the world's big corporations and the think tank for business. Well, they are very clearly calling now for a new economy, one based on natural cycles, on a circular economy where it's not just all extraction in one way. It's respecting nature and the needs of nature by also giving back to nature. And this also calls for a new type of capitalism, one which is aware of and supportive of the value of life, not the quantity of wealth. This is very important. There's a third one called the High Ambition Coalition of Nations, facilitated by Costa Rica and France. Now over 70 nations have signed on to a pledge to protect at least 30% of the Earth's lands and seas in order to address climate and address species extinction, because truly these are two halves of the same coin. And we must pull these together if we're going to effectively, efficiently find solutions to these crises that face us. So in addition to the High Ambition Coalition, which is all governmental, there's very recent events at the IUCN, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, which just met in Marseille. And it had been postponed twice because of the pandemic. But during this phenomenal meeting, 5,000 people, many more people online, we had to figure out a lot of things on the fly, as they call it, because systems were all changing. But in the resolutions process where policy recommendations were adopted, one of them was to protect 80% of the Amazon, which could not be more important as a planetary action. And also, of course, the 12-year campaign called Motion 101, which was about nature needs half. The IUCN, the world's foremost global environmental body, officially recommends now that the science tells us that we must protect at least half of the Earth's lands and seas and connect them if we are to give nature a fighting chance to support us in health as we go forward. None of the things I've just mentioned would have been even possible or even thinkable 10 years ago. So there's an acceleration of response. Is it enough? We need more. But just as important as all of these high-level actions by politicians and institutional leaders and negotiators is the work being done by the thousands of communities around the world, the businesses, the neighborhood groups, the clubs. They're going out, they're cleaning up, they're changing their houses, the construction techniques. They're changing the vehicles that they use. They're working on trails so that people can get into nature. They're leaving some nature alone so nature can restore and replenish itself. So what do all these things show us, all these actions, whether on high level or ground level? Number one, these actions demonstrate purpose, and we must be purposeful in the face of challenge. Number two, the volume of the actions, the way they speak to our leaders, demanding political will, they show that we're ambitious. And in a time of crisis, you must be ambitious. We must do things that are over the top, that are more than we would on any average day, so that every one of our actions speaks of our purpose and our commitment. This is ambition. And taken all together, the purpose, the ambition, what this does is builds resilience of our mind, of our emotions, and of our spirit. Because in times of challenge, we cannot fade away. Resilience is strength, strength in the face of sometimes overwhelming challenge. And we can do this because we have purpose, we have ambition, and we build resilience. As president of the Wild Foundation and also Wilderness Foundation Global in South Africa, and of course with my colleagues on the Wilderness Specialist Group at the IUCN, I'm very pleased to announce that the Global Rewilding Alliance has formally established now. It came out of the planning for the 11th World Wilderness Congress, which was canceled because of the pandemic, but we proceeded with the planning and those products. This alliance now, recognized by the UN Decade of Restoration, some 130 member organizations around the world working collectively on 300,000 or 400,000 hectares of land and sea, restoring and rewilding. Some of the groups are practically working on rewilding areas. Some of the groups are working on the communications, the awareness, and a very special project that we're working on is called Animating the Carbon Cycle. And part of this mission, because it's all about restoration and rewilding, is really making people aware of the highly under-recognized, extremely valuable role that wildlife plays in mitigating carbon. The role of a single whale in the ocean, or species on land, and this can be land, sea, or air. All the science research now that's been building up over the last 10 to 12 years shows us that if we get wildlife of any type back up to historic numbers or close, that we can increase the carbon drawdown and storage by, with some species, twice, and some species up to 12 times or more. So this is a great way of what we call supercharging the ecosystem to address the climate change. And what does this also do? It helps species extinction. It strengthens species it addresses climate. So animating the carbon cycle is one of the key things that we can do now to protect, restore, and rewild our world. Yes, and I'll end how I began. The time for action is now. And maybe to put it in a framework, we call it the survival revolution, because that's where we are. It's the survival of nature, and therefore the survival of our civilization. As I've explained, there are ways that we can do this. But my message is very simple, very pragmatic, and it's very achievable. Let's think of it not in terms of wild science and numbers and all of that. If you're so inclined, fine. Let's just consider what it takes to create a new relationship with nature, that which eco-civilization calls for. Because we all know the power of a functional, working relationship. It builds things. Two people working together can build something much better than two people working on their own. A new relationship with nature, what does that take? Number one, we need to have a new economic model. Business needs to operate differently out of a sense of respect for nature, out of a sense of giving back to nature, not just extracting. Very, very important. The second thing, of course, is we need to protect the wilderness that's left. The wild nature that exists in forests and grasslands is the most efficient, most effective way to address climate change and save species. Trying to go back and fix systems that are already hammered or destroyed or badly damaged is at least 100 times the cost of saving it originally. And we have in wilderness and intact nature an existing system that draws down carbon, stores it, creates habitat for species, and then creates new species that are medicines and foods for us. So let's protect the magic and the mystery of the wilderness, because that will support us. Number 3 and onwards, we need to protect, we need to restore, we need to rewild. There's a lot of land and seas that are hammered, that we've abused, and we have the power, we have the means, we have the imagination to bring these systems back so they support us. And even more than that, rewild these systems so we can recreate a wilderness and a mystery of wilderness that evolves systems and plant forms and life forms that support us that we can never imagine. We know so little, and by studying nature and by rewilding nature, we begin to respect the power of nature to regenerate, to evolve, and to support us. So we can do this. We would be foolish to think that we're not in perilous times. We can't stick our heads in the sand. We do have the money, the imagination, and the methods. And when we put these into action, we demand of our leaders the political will to make the changes that are needed. The political will remains lacking in many places. We can do this. I ask you to join me in knowing one simple but profound thing. Though the times are perilous, we were born for this moment. We have everything we need to meet this challenge. Thank you. It's great to work with you.
Are you ready to be part of something wild? Something incredible? It's called rewilding, and it's already underway. We are millions of people, a turning tide. From doorstep to delta, summit to sea, across every continent. Now is the time to act, to protect, restore, and rewild the living world. All life depends on our actions. Now. We are all part of nature, within its intricate web of life. If it heals, so do we. people and wildlife can thrive together. Let's change our future and leave this earth better and more beautiful than we found it. Are you ready to rewild our world? Come and join us.